Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another round of Mind Your Puckin' Business with your host, Jeffrey Princeman.
Thank you, Dougie Sticks, coming to you as always from the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media here in Bergen County, New Jersey. A very rainy Bergen County, New Jersey today. This is the Mind Your Puckin' Business podcast brought to you by our good friends at the Bamboozle Project as well as DraftKings. We thank them both for their sponsorship of the program. You can go to thebamboozleproject.com and use your special promo code MYPB. Save yourself 20% off your total purchase. So go ahead and use that. I know some people have been doing that in the last week, and happy to hear the promo code is working, as it always is. And I shouldn't say that like it's a surprise it's working. I mean, wouldn't expect it to be anything else. This is episode 145, Ciento Cuarenta y Cinco on the Spanish dial. So we thank you for tuning in. You can send us your questions at any time to mypbshow@gmail.com. You can also DM us on the Instagram platform. Any questions at any time. Speaking of Instagram, we are live, as always, on Instagram as well as YouTube, so you can check us out there. And you can listen when you want at your leisure. That would be on either Spotify or iTunes. Anywhere. Yeah, I always say, like, if you want to find us, you can find us.
Yeah.
You know where to find us if you want to find us.
Absolutely.
And last but not least, use promo code somebody yesterday for the Ranger game.
Yeah.
Actually, last night, use promo code MYPB, save themselves $20 on their total order. So look,
on SeatGeek?
On SeatGeek, yeah. If you look, I mean, if you're ordering tickets, maybe it's a $200 or $300 purchase, so $20 may not seem like a lot. However, save yourself $20. That $20 when you get into the garden or wherever you go. Yes, it's a bottle of water or popcorn or something like that. So there you go. So the Rangers, when we were on last week, they had just had the 10-game winning streak snapped by Columbus, and they were preparing to play Columbus a couple nights after we were on, and we said, look, you would expect them to respond. You would expect them to have some sort of response, and they certainly did in that game. Now, maybe you would have liked to see them blow out Columbus and really do that, but they won. It was 2-1. They had two empty netters there at the end to make it a 4-1 final, but they played well. And once again in that game, Igor Shesterkin played well. Igor Shesterkin, by the way, finished the month of February at 7-0 and was named the NHL's third star of the month. So you don't normally, like, we wouldn't sit here and talk about, okay, well, Igor Shesterkin was the third star of the month. Whoop-de-doo, that's great. But the reason why I think it needs to be talked about is because, remember, we're in this age right now, or this era, where Igor lost his game and Jonathan Quick is the starter and all that good stuff. And the reality is it shows you that going forward in the playoffs, the Rangers' 10-game winning streak was spearheaded by Igor Shesterkin. So it's just a little, not that you should need the reminder, because you really shouldn't, but it's just a simple reminder that they will rely on Igor heavily in the playoffs. Saturday night, they go up to Toronto. Now, if you, I had said to my kids a couple weeks ago, and I don't remember why I said it or what the topic that brought it up, but it's somehow like I said that one of my bucket list things in my life is to see a Ranger game in Canada, right? You know, hockey is bigger in Canada. I won't get into the argument with you about what the real national sport is in Canada, but hockey is, well, how about this? We will agree on the fact that hockey.
This is not like an opinion. This is like a Google fact.
We're not discussing. All I'm saying is we can agree that hockey is big in Canada. Yeah. So it's big in Canada.
Probably bigger in Canada than it is in Texas.
Yeah. So typically, when the Rangers cross the border and play games up there, they're usually entertaining, right? You can go back to the Montreal game back in January. The Western Conference road trip, obviously, in the beginning of the year when they swept through Western Canada was great, although they did lose to Ottawa in December. And they lost to Ottawa in December. But normally those games are good. And when you get a Saturday night Canada game that features two original six franchises, Hockey Night in Canada, normally, I wouldn't bet the house on it, but normally you're in for a treat. And that was what you had last week in Canada the other night. Now, the Rangers go down on a back and forth, pretty evenly played game. And Vincent Trocheck ties it in the final minutes with about I think it was a little under 2 minutes left. They go to overtime. Nobody scores. Plenty of chances either way. Panarin had a great chance in overtime. And they go to a shootout and lose in actually the fourth round of the shootout, an extra round. So to me, when you tie a game on the road in the final minutes, you take the point and you run, right? You'd like to get the extra point in overtime. I get it.
Mhm.
However, you earned that point. You came back on the road in the final minutes. You did what you needed to do. So to me, I think it's fine. You take the tie. Last night we put up, so if you follow us on Instagram, and I do recommend you do if you don't already, if you follow us on Instagram, we do these power rankings every week. We do a collab with NYR Discussion, great site, probably the best Ranger site out there on Instagram. And we do a power rankings every week. And yesterday when we put them out, because we normally put them out on Mondays, which is what we did yesterday, it was Florida 1, the Rangers 2. This was not done knowing the pending matchup, although we knew it. It's just that was the way we kind of looked at things. So they play last night, and everyone all day is commenting and responding on the thing. Well, the test is tonight. The test is tonight. Yes, it is, but you can't make a regular season. You can't put so much emphasis on a regular season game in March. Yeah, it's important. You want to see how you match up with a team. But also, the trade deadline is Friday. So these teams are going to look different if they meet in the spring than they did on March 4th last night. Last night was a pretty even game. Like if you look at the shots were pretty even. It was 2-2 going into the third. Florida scored and Igor let in a goal that should have never been let in. It happens, right? The guy's been, as I just said a couple minutes ago, he's been so good that, to let in a bad goal that unfortunately ends up being the game winning goal. It's not the end of the world. You're not going to go nuts about it. You would have liked to win. Florida is a challenge. And I will say this, that if the Rangers do match up against Florida down the road, and if you look at the way the brackets are done in the NHL, it really cannot be until the Eastern Conference Finals. There's really not really a path that they would meet before then, which is good. But if they meet in the Eastern Conference Finals, if you remember back in January, David Pagnotta was here, and he had said the same thing. He said, look, if the Rangers and Panthers play in the conference finals, that would be a wild series. I mean, if you're in the conference finals, I don't condone the use of drugs at all, at all. And anyone who knows me knows that. However, if you do take, let's say you took whatever an anxiety medicine was, that would be an anxiety inducing finals because it would be back and forth and high paced and it would be entertaining. But the Panthers are legit. Sam Reinhart scored twice last night. I think he has 44 goals now on the season. It's just it's a very good team. And you have to remember that is a team that eliminated the President's Trophy winning Bruins last year.
True.
So you cannot, under any situation, allow yourself to think that the Panthers are the old Panthers of the old, because if you're going to play them, guess what? It's going to be a challenge. So you take that. Now the Rangers have this bizarre scheduling quirk where they're off till Saturday. It's not technically, teams have built in with their collective bargaining agreement. They'll have a mini bye during the year. The Rangers had theirs in January. It's almost like they have a second one here. And it's actually, to me, good timing because you have the trade deadline on Friday. So I would look at it and say to myself that if I could allow myself the opportunity to get a break here while the trade deadline, that way you don't have anyone who can get hurt this week. They're not, I believe they're not even practicing today or tomorrow. That would be the sort of thing to me that you would take and be happy with. So speaking of the trade deadline coming up, Friday at 3 p.m. is the deadline. Now, it is surprising to me, I will say this. I am surprised that we sit here and we tape this episode on March 5th and nothing has been done yet. I don't look at it as a good or bad thing. That doesn't make me concerned or unconcerned. I'm just a little surprised because normally, if you look like last year, the Tarasenko deal was done in the beginning of February, and there were a bunch of minor deals. Kane was done on March 2nd. So there was stuff that was done that when the Rangers got to the deadline, they were almost in a position where they didn't have to do a lot, right? It had already been done, and you could field last minute offers. Chris Drury could do that and say, you know what, maybe there's a last minute offer that comes my way that I like with a team that's desperately trying to sell. That didn't happen, which was fine. But the Rangers now are putting themselves at March 5th in a situation with 4 days to go. They've got to do something, and they're probably putting themselves up against the clock a little bit more, which I don't know that you really like. Like if I was a buyer, which you would anticipate the Rangers are going to be, you'd almost rather buy it sooner because the price is probably only going to go up as it gets closer. But I'll put my my trust in Chris Drury with that. Here's what you're going to see this week. You're going to find out, and this has been discussed many times here with people on the show, is what does the organization think of certain people? And not just players that you know, but prospects, right? Who are they willing to give up? To me, I don't want to go on a Zach Jones rant, but Zach Jones would be someone that if another team called, you certainly would say, you know what? If the deal coming back is good, I am okay. I can live with sending Zach Jones elsewhere.
You already said you'd pack his bags for him.
I would. And I offered, if I remember last week, to say I'd pay the Uber to the airport.
You wouldn't drive him personally?
If I had to, I would. And I want to say, because I have pictures of my kids with him from a few months ago. He's a super nice dude. But it just doesn't really fit here. The other thing is Barclay Goodrow. And everyone who is so into moving Barclay Goodrow has the right train of thought. But where you're wrong is that Barclay Goodrow has an awful contract that Chris Drury would have to move with him. And I can't see a situation where another GM wants Barclay Goodrow and his one goal and the awful. Oh, that's not a joke, by the way. That wasn't like a thing. I just think that they, could do that. So I'm going to take an Instagram question, and that's from Jason. If we still had Kane and Tarasenko, we would have won both games against Florida because there would have been less pressure on our goalies if only we had gotten them in 2021 instead of waiting until last year. It's possible, but I don't want to, like Jason debating if they would have won 2 regular season games versus Florida. They got to win the games in the spring, right? I mean, maybe they would have, maybe they wouldn't. But I'm not overly concerned about the stuff here in the yes.
So in our Instagram comments, someone makes a joke saying that other sites and other podcasts are talking about trading Igor. Now I know that's far-fetched thing.
Well, we talked about this.
Yes. What would you do? What would you guys do if that actually was reality? Would your head explode?
I would. It's not even worth talking about. It's not.
I know.
What would I do if they traded Igor?
What would you do if you found out later on today? Like, what would your first reaction be? Would you throw your Dunkin' coffee across, like your iced tea across the room? Like, what would be your first reaction?
If they did, I wouldn't really react. Like, I wouldn't be annoyed.
Like, that's the Rangers.
No, well, that would be part of it, but I'd probably look at it and say to myself, like, I'd have to digest that. But here's the good news. It's not going to happen. But speaking of which, we should mention this from this week, as I forgot to. Jonathan Quick signed a 1-year extension on Sunday. So he will be back next year.
Wow.
And if you ever want a situation, like a textbook example of somebody who plays for, takes a 1-year deal, has to prove himself to be re-signed and get a raise, Jonathan Quick is your definition in the dictionary because he's had a marvelous year and he's been rewarded for it. He doesn't have to go into free agency over the summer. He knows he will be back in Broadway, and the deal that they signed him for is good. Another thing on Instagram, I saw someone say move Mika down to the second line since he can't score 5-on-5. Here's my thing with that. Is Mika, I'm going to answer that with a question. Is the Mika line the second line and we just don't know it? We refer to him as the first line? Because the top, what we all consider the second line of Trocheck, Lafreniere, and Panarin is really the top line, right? But because they're on line 2, so I don't, and Mika is it is an issue. I'm not going to get into it yet because we're just 5 days into Mika March, as we call it. Mika March. But the Mika situation, I will say this, is starting to be, I don't want to say an issue, but it's starting to be the sort of thing that would be you would be looking at. So anyway, back to what I was saying. You're going to see this week really what the organization thinks in terms of opportunities with people and who who the organization feels
Mhm.
is worthy and who isn't, and what prospects they're going to move. Do you have a prediction for the trade deadline?
I think we're gonna do. I don't think we're gonna make big waves as everyone's expecting. I think it's gonna be a maybe one or two small players that you're not even gonna notice the difference. I think you got to keep your core. You had a good season, and now you just got to get ready for the playoffs.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, the Rangers will do something. Even in the years where they are not good, they will do something. However, I would look at it and say to myself, it's just a matter of time here. And what does he do? Steve Valiquette put out a tweet last night, and that was, look, this is the year for them to go all in. It's 100% the year to go all in. I don't know that I agree with that. I try to look at it this way with this team. The first episode we ever did back in 2020, like we were in Corona times, you and I were sitting on opposite sides of the room. People were killing us for being, doing such a thing. How would you do that? And back then we talked about the window of opportunity, right? The window of opportunity. The window of opportunity is still there.
This window slows very slowly.
Yeah, slow stay.
Slow close.
All right, we are going to bring in. Why don't we bring in our guest, and then we'll get back to some trade deadline stuff in a little bit. We're going to go around the world here a little bit today. We're going to do like a global feel, which we don't usually do often. We're going to go like not, and Europe is far, right? But it's not like that far. I was just there last month. It's a 7-hour drive.
Yeah, I mean, I can't swim that far.
You can't. Well, back in your lacrosse days, you could.
Probably.
We're going to go all the way to Australia, and we're going to bring in Charmaine Shembri, sorry about that. I said that wrong. Let's see if we can get her on. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you?
I am good. Just even hearing the accent is refreshing. I'm sure it's the same for you when you hear us with our accents.
It's quite the novelty when I come to the States and everybody hearing this.
There you go. All right. So now this is cool. Let's talk about how this happened. You follow Mind Your Puckin' Business. You live 10,000 miles away. Our timing is different. Because it's 10 a.m. here in the East Coast. What time is it there?
1 a.m. I've literally woken up to speak to you guys.
Okay. So we appreciate the dedication, of course. How hard is it, first of all, to follow the Rangers and the NHL, being that you are on a completely opposite time schedule as us?
It's hard. From a watching games perspective, it's quite hard. There's a couple of providers you can watch games with, but you actually can't watch every single game. So I found a way to actually get all the games through ESPN, through a telecommunications provider, funny enough. So, yeah, it's quite hard if you're a fan, but I guess if you want to make it work, you can.
Yes, you definitely can. So last year or earlier this year, the Global Series was in Australia, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, so that was November last year, and that was the first ever NHL game to be in Australia.
Yes, that was, and I remember, so it was weird because it was on at midnight here, and normally preseason games are not overly exciting. However, you get to the point you haven't had hockey in 5 months. If hockey's on, you want to watch it. So I did stay up and watch. I believe it was on a Saturday and Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, at least here. That were the days. And I did stay up and watch at least part of that first game. You have been to, tell us your story about the Rangers in Vegas.
Okay. So I had been following the Rangers a couple of years by that stage, but I love this story. So I went to Vegas, and a friend was actually meant to come with me, and he got really unwell with COVID. And I thought, you know what? I could go to the game by myself and just have a lot of fun, or I can choose not to go to the game. Anyway, I chose to go to the game, and usually I get like really good seats. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go in the nosebleed. It was in Vegas. So, you know, the top where you can go and everyone's just standing around and drinking. I thought, you know what? I'm going to go and mingle. And I went and mingled, and it was the Knights versus the Rangers. And here I am alone, an Aussie in Vegas, just screaming, rooting for the Rangers. And I get this tap on my shoulder, and it was a girl and two guys. And they were like, are we hearing correctly? Is that an Australian accent? I'm like, yeah. And like, what is an Australian doing in Vegas at a Knights game rooting for the Rangers? And I was like, is that strange? And they're like, yeah, it's actually really strange. Anyway, we all made friends and I started hanging out with them. That I went back and hung out with them that night, grab a drink at the tables. And one of them, who, by the way, I'm actually good friends with them all three of them. We're still good friends, stayed in touch. I've been back to the States twice, hung out with them. But one in particular, Alex, who we've become extremely close friends, him and I stayed in touch, and he said, I'm coming to Australia potentially for work, and we should hang out. And I was like, yeah, cool. You just let me know if you're in Australia. So he makes that call. He's like, hey, I'm coming to Australia. I'm like, cool, let's hang out. He ends up coming. We end up watching so many games at my place, hockey games. I fly back to the States. I think it was like a few months later. We hang out some more. We go watch some games at the Garden. And so this beautiful friendship had actually stemmed from meeting at a Rangers and Knights game in Vegas. I love it. It's such a good story. But more importantly, I've gained such an amazing friend out of it.
That is very cool. So obviously you're a hockey fan and your allegiance is correct that you follow the Rangers. How did the Rangers become the team that you support?
It was the first game I'd ever been to. So I was in New York. I think it was 2015 or 2016. And my partner at the time was like, we have to go to a hockey game. I think you're going to really like it. So we went to the game. We went to a game at the Garden. I can't even remember who they were playing, how bad. But I remember there was one guy on the ice. It was Zook, 36.
Yep.
And I fell in love with how he was playing that day. And I just didn't want the game to end. And I remember at the end of the match, I just looked at my partner. I was like, can we just keep staying? Can we come again? Can we come again and again and again and again? And I just loved it so much. And I fell in love with the sport from that day. Went home, I was watching the Rangers games. And yeah, that's how my love for, I guess, NHL and the Rangers started.
There you go. All right. So we take it for granted going to the Garden where the Rangers play MSG all the time. Was it because I hear all the time that if you're if you're not from here, the Garden is you get there, it's the Mecca, it's crazy. Did it have that feel for you when you were there, that it was a special place?
Yeah, it did. I think the special thing about Rangers games as well, and if you go to just say let's use a Kings game as an example, the comparison. If you go to a Rangers game, the atmosphere is so alive. There's like a lot of blood, like real blood, New York blood that's at the Rangers games at the Garden. So it's so alive, it's so electric, and they're sold out. And then in comparison, you go to a Kings game and it's a lot of kind of Wayfair fans, like the in and out fans, and there's a lot of empty seats, and they're trying to create a vibe, but the real vibe is where is at the Garden.
Yes, for sure. So, well, thank you for joining us. We will have you back. You will be our Australian correspondent, if you will, for
There we go.
MYPB as well as the Rangers. And hopefully you will be able to fly in if there's a ticker tape parade to celebrate them hopefully winning the Stanley Cup in June, because that would be worth the 16-hour flight for sure.
That would absolutely be worth visiting for the Stanley Cup would absolutely be worth it.
There you go. I think it is so cool that you follow us and you love the Rangers from that far away. That is just really cool. That is Charmaine Chembry. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Very cool. Nice little different style guest.
Absolutely.
Really cool. Really good stuff there.
Worldwide.
We try. Now we got to get in Antarctica next.
Antarctica. I don't know how many people are there though.
Do they have Wi-Fi? They don't even have Wi-Fi
I don't
there.
think there's people on Antarctica. Isn't that like
I don't know.
Polar bears.
that
If you're from Antarctica, DM us.
Yeah, no. All right, so let's take some Instagram. I'm gonna go to the Instagram live because there's a ton of stuff here that I missed, and I apologize for that, guys. That was going on. So, we have a couple people wishing that the Rangers played the Islanders in the first round. I wouldn't want that at all.
Oh yeah.
Here's why.
Okay, tell us why.
You don't. If you're going to be you're going to be the better team on paper, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to be the lower seed, the better team. That stuff gets thrown out the window when you have a matchup like a Rangers Islanders or Ranger Devils, right? And you saw last year, like the Rangers and Devils were pretty equal. Like I don't really know that we went into the series and thought, well, one team was light years better than the other. But if you're going to sit here and believe that the Rangers had a great regular season, the Islanders sneak in the playoffs because they're playing really well the last week, that's not a matchup I would want. I'm not saying there's a matchup I would target like, oh, I would love to play this team because the Rangers will definitely win it. But I don't.
There's more investment in those games, those the tri-state area games.
Yeah, there's more.
It's more on the line.
Now it's good.
Reps
right?
On the line. Street cred.
And like I said with the Panthers series, it's just full of total anxiety.
Yeah.
Like if you go back to last year playing the Devils, like now you kind of look at it, you're still annoyed about it. You were up 2-0 in the series, and you were up after game 2 in total dominating fashion. Okay. And then you look at it and you now look back a year later, you realize that what annoys me about it, I get annoyed about it more because it was the Devils. Like if that had happened versus, I don't know, the Carolina Hurricanes or the Columbus Blue Jackets or Ottawa, I'd be annoyed, but it wouldn't sting 9 months later. Because it was the Devils. It still annoys me because of that. And that would be what you'd be dealing with if you played the Islanders. It's not a matchup to me, I think, that the Rangers would want in the first round.
I agree.
So
and that's what I was saying last year. I would like the Devils and the Rangers to face off like as the late as possible.
Well, the Devils will probably not be in the playoffs this year. And yesterday, we should mention this. They fired their coach, Lindy Ruff.
Wow.
Now, I said it to our producer, B-Rock, who's a big Devil fan, and I give B-Rock credit because yesterday they fired their coach, right?
Yeah.
And they've had a terrible week. Jack Hughes on this penalty shot the other day in Anaheim. I mean, then they got lit up by the Kings. It's bad. It's bad in Devils land. It's a rainy Tuesday morning, and B-Rock comes in today, and he's sporting his Devils hat. Like, he's a fan. Like, he stands by his team.
Absolutely.
But
people don't.
But I was saying to him that I was surprised at how many people on social media, when they fired him at like 5 o'clock yesterday, were rejoicing like he was the problem. I'm sure he was part of it, but they still don't have goaltending. Yeah. Their defense hasn't been good, and Dougie Hamilton's been out too. I'm sure. I mean, that doesn't help the case.
Yeah, Doug's the man.
So I don't know. And people are now commenting, people pay to watch me play. That is going to be a quote that Jack Hughes said that is going to live with this guy forever. And it's a shame that the Rangers Ed people are not here today in the chat room with all these people, because they love getting on Jack Hughes, and they would love that aspect of the Jack Hughes ripping. So yes. All right. Going to some other Instagram comments so far. Ruff is a good coach. They're a gutless team with no fight. That's not Lindsay's fault, and they have no goalie. Yeah. I mean, look, I don't watch a lot of Devils games. I'll watch it if it's on. So I am far from knowing a lot what's going on there to comment, but I can tell you it's definitely not just the coach. It wasn't like they're going to turn around. And Travis Green is going to, has an interim tag. So it's not like they're going to now make him coach, which is smart. They're going to make him coach the next 6 weeks and say, prove to us to remove the interim tag. So, and Nikolai writes a very good thing. He now has to pay to watch Travis Green, which is true. You'll have to pay to watch Travis Green coach. So back with the Rangers. So with the deadline, again, what would I like the Rangers to do this week? I would like them, look, in a perfect world, they would find a top line right wing, because you still need to fill that. You need a third line center. If I'm going to do that both, and I'm going to get a third line center and a top line right wing, the price tag for both is probably high, right? And I don't think that you would be able to get them both with just prospects and picks. So therefore, you're going to have to give up somebody on it that is a rostered player, right? I don't think Chris Drury is going to be able to say, look, and we'll put Nikolai's comment up. Here's a top line right wing with term. Here's a third line center. And I didn't subtract anything from the current roster because all I moved were prospects and picks or minor leaguers. I don't think you can do, I would love it to happen, but I don't think he's going to be able to do that. So I don't want to take I don't want to give up a lot. And I guess a lot of people disagree with me. Like, I disagree. I was started to say Steve Alakett last night, what he said. I just have a different opinion where I look at the window of opportunity. Yes, this year is wide open. Any team can win the East, but any team can win the East any year. There's not, look at last year. Were you going to tell me that nobody was going to win the East because Boston was having the greatest regular season in history? They were out the first round. That argument doesn't work. It doesn't, especially in playoff hockey. It doesn't work. So if I could go and get one of those needs filled, top line right wing or third line center, I would almost say you would get I would rather find the top line right wing with term. That moves Kako back down to the third line. And even though you don't have a center there that you love, you at least
Remsanity.
Remsanity. No, it's not. But Remsanity, by the way, Larry Brooks has an article in the Post today saying exactly what I said last week, that his days are going to be limited because when they make moves, he's going to be the odd man out. So the Remsanity is like a temporary thing, like I said a week ago. People didn't believe me, but it's in the New York Post today. 100%. He's not going to be on the roster that long, so enjoy it while you can.
Well, it's because he's going to be in the hospital with all his fights.
With all the fights. Yes, he is. Although he didn't get in a fight last night. Yeah, it was good. He was good, well behaved.
Yeah.
So I would rather them, if it's me, I would rather them pull back. I would rather get the top line right wing, but I don't want them to go crazy and do a massive overhaul and do a lot. I just don't. I'd rather do a little bit, do one or two things, and roll my dice with there, because the reality is whatever I'm going to get back, it's probably not going to be reliant on that player, how far they go in the playoffs. It's going to be reliant on how well Igor Shesterkin plays in the spring. And that's not, I don't need to give up a lot to see that. So, trade Chris Kreider. That's one thing that will not happen, Matthew. However, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I don't hate the idea, but it's not going to happen. Edstrom gets the axe before Remke is another comment. It's actually possible. That's possible. And another person saying Edstrom goes down before Remke. Remke is a moose. The Remke thing is interesting. If you were not in, I don't want to say into him, but if you didn't buy into him, and I didn't buy into him, but if you're not into the hype, I'd say you would have opened your eyes a little bit if you saw Ryan Reeves' comments about him after the game, that he believes he's going to be a force in the league for a long time, which is good. I mean, look, and if you tell me that you knew who Matt Rempe was, 6 weeks ago, you're lying, because you didn't know who he was. So, and that is correct. Oh, and no one is taking Kreider's contract, especially because Kreider is now getting into the back end of that contract. I think it was an 8-year deal. We're now getting into the second half, which is anyone. Nikolai asked a question: has anyone seen Mika recently? All right. I'm gonna take this because this is coming up in the chat, and I didn't want to go down the Mika Zibanejad road today.
Yeah,
I didn't, but we're gonna do it because I feel like I need to do it, because if you look at the Instagram chat, there's about 4 people, and now it's on YouTube. All right, Mika Zibanejad has not been good, right?
Wow, you just came out and said it.
But I'm not saying anything statistically wise that you can argue, right? If I look at stats as a fact, okay, Chris is not here today. Chris would say, if he was here, that you have to look at it that that Mika Zibanejad is helping to shut down other teams' top lines. And Dan Rosen, when he was on with us 2 weeks ago from NHL.com, kind of alluded to the same thing, that it then becomes a battle of third lines, and that's the importance of third lines. I get the argument. However, I am paying my top line center what I am paying him. I've seen him be an incredibly streaky player throughout his entire career, forever. Even when he's had great years, he's been streaky within those years. He's never consistently good, right?
Okay.
He goes on hot streaks. This year, he did it in December. It is now March, okay? And he also disappeared in the playoffs last year with Panarin. So if he doesn't, let's say Mika Zibanejad doesn't show up in the next 6 weeks,
Okay.
and in the playoffs he goes missing again, it is a fair question to say in the offseason if they should try to move Mika Zibanejad going forward. It's fair.
Okay, so do you think, because his lull's now, he might pick it up in the playoffs? It's a good timing for this lull. Do you think it's good timing?
I mean, I think if he picked it up now with the playoffs coming and performed, and even in the last 5 or 6 weeks of the regular season, I think people would forget easily that he was what happened, had the inconsistencies this year. However, you cannot ignore your top line center having the statistical year that he is having. You cannot ignore that. If you are ignoring that, you are selectively choosing, I'll say it that way, you are selectively choosing to turn away from something negative because you don't want to look at it or you don't want to address it. And there's a comment on Instagram, and it's fair. Mika had a kid. This is the dad year. Igor, when he had a kid, went through it. I get it. But Mika is getting paid a lot of money that he can have a baby nurse. I don't make a lot of money. I had a baby nurse for a week when my kids were born. Mika Zibanejad, I believe, makes he makes more than that. He makes like $9 or $10 million a year. He can afford a baby nurse that he can sleep. Something with him needs to change. Now, some people are writing in the chat that you can split him up from Kreider. I'm not against that. However, splitting him up with Kreider cannot, under any circumstance, mean that you are splitting up in turn your best line of Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere. That line is untouched to me because that is the only line that is doing anything 5-on-5, and we're not going to mess with that. If it isn't broken, don't fix it. We're trying to fix the things that are broken.
Is there any planet that we live on where if Mika plays any worse, he could be on the trade block before the playoffs start?
Well, the
Before
trade would have
Friday.
to be. It would have to. He's not being traded this week. There's zero chance of that.
Okay.
If they have a bad playoffs and he disappears again, which he did, I'm. Why would it not? Here's my question. My answer is this. But here's my answer. It's a question. Yeah. If that happens, then it's this. Why would it not be a question? Why would we not sit here in May and June when we do this? And why would Mika Zibanejad have a pass if it was 2 straight playoffs? He has not had a good year. And I'm glad that Chris is not here today because he would destroy me on this because his argument is that, he's shutting down the other top lines. And I get it. That's part of it. However, there has to be some statistical production. And him and Kreider and whoever is on the third line, whether it's Kakko, whether it was Blake Wheeler, or whether whoever's coming to come back this week, hopefully, and fill that role, whether it be Vetrano or Tarasenko or whoever you want it to be, at some point, it has to be brought up.
Yeah.
You can't just ignore it.
When's his contract up?
Thank you, Nikolai. His contract is out until 2029, 2030.
What?
But that's not
contract.
So that's good, and it can be good or bad. You could look at the bad and say, wow, the Rangers are stuck with him to 2029 if he's bad. The other side of it is if you can find a buyer that believes that he's not as bad as we would perceive him to be, you're getting value because, again, you want contracts coming back with terms sometimes. That's a good term. Now, the salary is high would be the issue for someone. They'd have to fit it under their cap. But a couple other comments on Mika. Mika had the unfortunate reality of playing without a right wing the whole season. So how could you get on him with too much of a load to carry? Look, if you are a top-line center, I understand he has not been given stuff on the right wing. Blake Wheeler was not the answer. Capo Kakko is probably not the answer offensively for sure. You've got to find a way to still produce more than what's been going on. I mean, this is really getting to a point here where I don't want to say you got to be concerned, but you got to be paying attention to it. It has your attention. I'm not panicked over it, but if he doesn't do something soon, it has not been a good year for Mika Zibanejad. And a lot of this team, for the people on the team that are not statistically having that good of a year, you're not realizing it because when you think about the Ranger stats, Panarin setting assist records, Trocheck doing this, Lafreniere coming out, Jonathan Quick doing what he did in the first 4 months of the season. Now Igor, there's been things that have kind of distracted you to see those things. Now, these are things that we don't need to talk about March 5th. We need to talk about that in June. But question, Vetrano, do I think Frank Vetrano will come back? It is possible. I certainly think it is possible that Alex Wenberg is coming here from Seattle. So he would be a third-line center. The Rangers have been linked to him. And yesterday, Seattle Kraken took him and did not even have him play in practice and didn't even have him play in the game, which they quoted was, and the reason they gave I mean, let's not try and give it away, was trade-related issues. So he's clearly on the way out of Seattle. The Rangers need a third-line center. I wouldn't be surprised if he is your answer for the third-line center.
Wow.
And don't ask me what I think of it because I don't know what's going back. I don't know what the cost is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you say to me, like, oh, you know what? You went out to eat in the city at this really good restaurant. How was it? Don't you? If I told you the price of the good steak wasn't bad, I tell you it was good. But if I told you I paid $750 for a good steak, I say, you know what? It wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
But the steak was still good. Wenberg was still good. You need to see the price. If Vetrano comes with the lines, be Vetrano, Mika, Kakko. That is correct. No, that's not correct. Correct. Hold on. You would have Vetrano, Mika, and Kreider. Kakko would go down to the third line. I don't think they're moving Kreider at this point in the season to the third line. You would have, and you would have a, you'd have an argument. Like, I'd understand where you're coming from, but they're not going to do that now. And if they're bringing someone back to play on the top line, they're going to have them on that top line to play with Mika and Kreider. I don't know why you would keep Kakko on the top line. He hasn't had a good year statistically wise either. So I don't know. It'll be interesting because I'll tell you this week, you're going to get your answer by, I believe it's Friday, but I believe it's 3 p.m. It's usually the trade deadline. So if you look at it, you have 76 and a half hours to the trade deadline.
Oh, man.
And we will be here next week to analyze it all for you.
Absolutely.
But we will, if you want feedback, I'm sure we'll give it on Instagram. We'll give feedback on what is good and what is not.
Sounds good to me.
So we shall see on that. All right. Anything else on the Ranger front from you, sir?
No.
No.
I can't wait till 3 o'clock. See what happens.
You will be glued to your phone.
Yeah.
If there is anybody that is
Who's
glued...
the Shefty of NHL?
Who's the what?
The Adam Schefter of NHL.
Who's the Adam Schefter?
Like Adam Schefter's always breaking
I know.
news. Like, there's rumors that this person's getting traded.
Frank Cervelli, David Pagnotta, who was on with us, Dan
Okay.
Rosen. But Dan Rosen, I think, Dan Rosen would be up there.
So these
EJ
are the guys that
Raddick,
you want to
Kevin
follow on
Weeks.
Twitter. Find out. 3 o'clock.
Yeah, the Rangers,
info.
and as we always say, like Chris Drury has a thing where he's so like tight to the vest. You know nothing. Like Tarasenko got traded here on a Thursday afternoon last year in February, and it was like you didn't even know that you had no idea that was going to happen. That was Sammy Blais going the other way. Like so you could think. Here's the other thing. You could think that you know what Chris Drury is going to do and bring you back Vetrano and what I said, Wenberg and all that stuff and all that. Tarasenko, do not be surprised in the least if what ends up happening, you didn't even know the guy was. You didn't even think about it. Like he ends up pulling some guy from, Columbus and Chicago in a 3-way deal, or Calgary who's trying to get rid of people right now. They're sellers. Like you do not be surprised at all. We know hockey games move fast. Bet with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. You can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings app with code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problems gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. So,
Absolutely.
Tarasenko should have been kept, from Jen Bergman. Yeah, you know what? You know what bothers me, Jen? This is what bothers me. And this is the same thing with Vetrano.
Mm-hmm.
Here are players that you had, right? Vetrano and Tarasenko. You could have resigned because Frank Vetrano wanted to stay here. And Tarasenko, from what I gather, wanted to stay here too. Now, I understand that Anaheim gave Vetrano more money than the Rangers could give him, right? Mm-hmm. And Ottawa gave a pretty good deal to Tarasenko. However, it bothers me when the Rangers have players
Mm-hmm.
and then they want him back a year and a half later or even less than a year later with Tarasenko, and you then have to pay to get them back. Mm-hmm. That always just, I don't know why. It's like a pet peeve, and it doesn't mean in the moment the Rangers weren't right to keep Tarasenko or keep Vetrano, but it just bothers me. But you could make the argument that Tarasenko should have been kept because look at the top line right wing. It's been a deficiency all freaking season long. And maybe, you know what, they thought that either Kakko or Blake Wheeler could fill that role, but Obviously not.
Yeah.
Hence why we're having this discussion
Yeah.
today as
Yeah.
we approach the trade deadline.
Very
So we will see on Friday, if not sooner, what they will do. It's really like this at this point. It's any minute now. The Rangers will make a move between now and whenever, right? Any minute the Rangers will make a move.
Can we play a game?
Yeah.
All right. So B-Rock will pull out a clip right here. It's going to start right here. You're gonna put in the comments section of this clip, who do you think the Rangers will either get or sell? And if you're right, you get a $10 gift card at Dunkin' Donuts.
I'm gonna warn you though, and I like the
Yeah.
contest. There's definitely like answers. If I were trying to win a gift card,
Yeah.
I can't play. Obviously, I'm excluded.
Obviously.
I'm property
Don't
of
give the answer away then.
Well, I don't know. The only Chris Story knows. I'm not.
Okay.
All I'm saying is this:
Yes.
if I was playing for a gift card,
Yeah.
and you're gonna have to figure out, is it like the first one to say, like, because you're gonna have
if
a
you
thing.
all say, you know,
Right, this one player,
Tarasenko, like, yeah.
and then all of a sudden, Undefeated Media is on the hook for $930 at Dunkin' Donuts gift cards. But
Yeah.
there would be an opportunity, like you'd play your odd. You would put names in that you think have a higher chance of coming back. That's all
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Also, could be the ones that. What do you think we're gonna get rid of?
Okay, so here's the contest. Let me iron it out for you.
Okay.
Let me help you out.
Okay.
Okay. Here's the contest,
I got you.
and we'll get B-Rock to do this to win a Dunkin' Donuts gift card.
Yes.
You have to name 2 players that the Rangers bring back because it's going to be multiple trades.
Okay.
If there's less than one, I'll take the blame for this.
Okay.
I need 2 players that come back, and I need 2 either players or prospects. You need to tell me what's going out. So tell me 2 people that are coming. Tell me 2 things that are leaving.
And at least one of them needs to be right on both ends.
Yeah. No. The first person who is right. Yeah, you have to be right on both. You have to be right on the
You can
2
nail
going.
both?
Yes. We're going to make, because it's too easy. It could be too easy if you
Okay.
read the stuff,
Okay.
right? You got to get, what are the 2 things that the Rangers are giving up?
Mm-hmm.
And what are 2 things the Rangers are giving
They don't
back?
have to be related,
Getting back.
as long as we get these 2.
Yeah.
and
No, it
we
doesn't have to
get
be the
these-
same deal.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
On Friday at 3:01,
Yes.
who name 2
2
things
players
that
we get.
are not on the Rangers right now?
And 2 players.
And what 2 things are either on the Rangers or property of the Rangers right now that are not? 2 for, 2 against. First person to get it right wins a $10 gift card. Thank you, Undefeated Media.
Boom.
Those people at Undefeated Media.
We're splitting
They are
the
good.
cost.
And Jen does not want to give up Keandre Miller. Keandre Miller, and I don't think they will, but Jen, I hate to say this, but I think in the offseason there is a legitimate chance it's going to be discussed. But it's not a conversation for now. We thank the Bamboozle Project. Thank you for sponsorship as well as DraftKings. You can go to thebamboozleproject.com. Use promo code MYPB. Save yourself 20% off your total order.
Mm-hmm.
You can send us your questions as always, mypbshow@gmail.com, as well as on the Instagram platform. And we thank Charmaine all the way from Australia, where it is now 1:30 in the morning, for joining us and filling us in on that stuff. Anything else on your end, sir?
No, great show. We're glad we could be your late night delight over in the
On a Wednesday morning,
for all the Aussies.
because they're ahead of us. So there would be
Early morning delight.
early morning delight, 1:30 a.m. That is it for this week. Enjoy the trade deadline, and we will talk to you next week.